If you were to ask me what's the most exciting compute service that's come out of Amazon in the last decade, I would have to say Lambda. Lambda is so exciting because what it allows us to do is run functions in our applications with compute resources up in the cloud that are serverless. So we don't have to spin up an EC2 instance in order to take care of some application function. Amazon Web Services will do it for us. Serverless compute in the cloud is the rage. Let's take a look at how Lambda works. So just to demonstrate that there's nothing up my sleeve, notice that we are at the EC2 dashboard here, and there are no running instances of EC2 in my Ohio region. So we have no compute resources that we've spun up. What we're going to do is go to Lambda, and we're going to take advantage of running code without any servers, no EC2 instances. And to do this, we create a Lambda function. Notice we can author from scratch, or we can start with a blueprint that'll walk us through a template, if you will, for doing this. So I'll do a search on S3 related blueprints, and here's one we can use, a simple little blueprint that will get metadata for objects that are being updated or put into S3. So perfect, I'll click on that blueprint. We'll give this a name of, how about Lambda hyphen test, and notice that we will need a role. We'll need a permission set for Lambda to use. Lambda just can't go playing with our resources without appropriate permissions, and this blueprint will create the role for us. All we got to do is give the role a name. So I'll say role Lambda test, for instance. And now, from a policy perspective, this is automatically going to assign to this role the S3 object read-only permissions, and that's perfect for us with this test. Next, we go in and we define what the trigger will be. I've created a bucket, and it sees this bucket called AJS Lambda test. So it will grab that bucket as the event source. And for an event type, we'll say if any object is created in that bucket. So object created all, and then we could further narrow that, but that'll do fine for us. And then we can go ahead and enable this trigger right now. So it says, all right, we're going to do this code for you from Python 2.7 in this Lambda function. What this is doing is it's going to go in and it's going to, for any object we put inside the bucket, give us the metadata for that object. Pretty cool. So I will create this function. And this is going to take just a second to create, and then we should be able to test this function. One of the nice things about Lambda is they'll allow you to test this right inside of the interface. So it says, all right, congratulations, your function Lambda test has been created. And notice the relationships here. So here's our Lambda test, and it's going to be working in conjunction with S3, both from a trigger perspective. This is the trigger over here, and that trigger we know is going to be based on objects being put in that bucket, and this trigger will produce output both for CloudWatch logs and Amazon S3 itself to show us the metadata. If we scroll down, we can see all kinds of details like the function itself that we looked at earlier and the handler information and the runtime that's being utilized. We can have environmental variables we can add and tags, but we're all set. We're ready to go with a test. So we're going to configure a test event, and this test event is going to be for an S3 put, and we'll just call this, how about my test? And then in this test code, we need to update it a little bit. For bucket name, they have simply source bucket. So I need to highlight this, and our bucket name, if you recall, was AJS-Lambda-test was the name of our bucket. And then notice for an object inside that bucket, they have this little placeholder of happyface.jpg. I know one object I have in there is thumb.zip, a zip file. So we'll update these parameters, and then we scroll down and we say we want to create this test. And it just created that test for us. So now let's see if Lambda would work. We're going to click this test button and it's going to simulate for us placing the object named thumb.zip into the bucket name that we specified and see if this function actually works. So I choose the test button and it executes our function. And fingers crossed, it succeeded. If we go to the details, we can see application zip was returned. And that is absolutely perfect because we tested this against a zip file named thumb.zip that was in that bucket. So this Lambda function is working beautifully. And notice all of the compute that made this possible was automated by Amazon Web Services. We didn't have to design or specify servers to take care of this function for us. Serverless computing, like I said, is getting more and more popular for you to be able to do stuff against your applications without worrying at all about the compute resources. Now think about it from a cleanup perspective. When you're done with your testing, there wouldn't be much to clean up, would there? We can go in and we can go to our Lambda functions and we can clean up the Lambda test function that we created. And then something else that we would want to clean up, of course, would be under identity and access management, because we know this blueprint created a role for us with the correct permissions, and I named it role Lambda test, so I can go in and I can clean up that role. So let's delete that role. And then finally, we know that we created an S3 bucket, and that S3 bucket was called AJS Lambda Test. And inside it, we know we had a thumb.zip and an image file. Of course, we could go in and now delete this AJS Lambda Test bucket as well. I cannot emphasize enough just how exciting serverless computing is, and Lambda is a tool to allow us to take advantage of that. I have been developing Amazon Alexa applications, and she just woke up and is listening to me right now. Alexa, cancel. And what I'm doing when I develop these apps is I'm calling Lambda functions to make them work. So when I develop a new Amazon Echo application, I don't need to worry about EC2 resources that'll run this application for me. The compute resources inside of Lambda take care of it. I hope this nugget has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.